scared me. He did this. I'm like, what does that mean? Well, good morning, you guys. We're going to go ahead and get started to honor your time. We're here. It was a very long meeting, as those of you who had the opportunity or the excitement to get to either be there in person and or watch it online. But it was a really productive meeting, and there was a lot of really, good things that really demonstrated the care and the compassion that so many people have in our community. And so that's, one thing that I think we sometimes take for granted. And so even though it was long, it was productive, and there were some really great things that came out of it. So today we're going to go through some of the things right now and kind of go through and talk to you about some of the kind of current things that we were able to get some decisions on, and some things were delayed last night. I know Charles and Jorge, your team was there to present, and they were delayed, so we won't get to see their presentation tonight. We'll get to see it at the next meeting, but we will go through these. So the first couple things that we did last night was we had some personnel assignments, particular kinds of service, and tie-breaking criteria. Those fall under personnel. So the one thing that with assignments is some of you have, I know a lot of people are meeting with different departments this morning to kind of give the information that it was decided that we will not be, bless you, we will not be replacing this assistant superintendent PGS. That was Antonio Garcia. His position will not be replaced in that kind of whole concept. What we've done is we've elected to basically change and shift around some of our current existing assistant superintendents and the roles. So Dr. Perez will be, she's got a new title, so I need to get my glasses on to actually read it to you, but she is the Assistant Superintendent of Equity, Access, and Community Engagement. And under her will be some different pieces, as you're probably already hearing, okay, access, community engagement, equity, some of the past things. And she met with her team this morning to let them know that they're kind of going to be shifting to some other leaders within their department. So that was one of our major shifts. Within your own departments, we're also kind of shifting topics and areas around, but I know that assistant superintendents and directors will be meeting with their departments shortly to be able to give that information out. But it's really a positive thing to have this opportunity to be able to have an assistant superintendent that can completely focus on some of our community engagement, equity, and some of the really positive work that we've started this year. We found that we need somebody to really be able to focus in and devote more time to that work to be able to support us in our journey as we move forward. So that was one of our big personnel assignment shifts. It's just a title shift. And so even though it's a title shift, there are the other shifts that I'll let the rest of the people kind of trickle down that information. The next piece that fell under personnel is what's called particular kinds of service. Particular kinds of service is an area that annually, how many of you have heard of the March 15th notification for certificated, for teachers, anyone who has a certification, the ed code that says you have to notice someone if there's going to be any shift in their job assignment? Okay, a couple people. All right, good. Well, that's by law through ed code. You have to notice somebody if they have a teaching credential and or they work under a credential by what we call, in the certificated side of the house, it's referred to as a March 15th notification, a pink slip. Very different. Classified is based on days, and it can be at any time during the year, but certificated is very specific, and if you don't notice that area, then you actually end up having to, we call own or fund them for the rest of that year. So with all of our different staffing shifts that have been going on, and the schools have been working diligently, very hard, thank you schools, to be able to get their staffing back. And as many of you know, we are down close to 1,500 in declining enrollment in the last 3 years. So with that, there's some impacts. That's normal. That wouldn't be something that when you lose 1,500 kids, what are attached to kids? FTEs that are in the classroom or they're working with them. So it's a normal kind of procedure piece for us. So what we do in personnel is we have to take a particular kind of service, credential cut, saying we possibly might lose in these areas. And what our office does is they align all of the retirements. That's why you notice that we do the early notice of notification for certificated. Tell us early that you're going to retire, because that's one less person we might have to notice, and one less person whose anxiety has to go up, as you all know. It causes, I remember in a year where both my husband and I each got 2, and then we got them rescinded and 2 again, and so it's tough, it's hard, and we recognize that. And so we want to work very hard and diligent to make sure that we can narrow it down. So this year with that, the team was able to really narrow it down. It started at about 24, and it's down to technically only 8.4, but it's 9.4, and I'll read you the areas that we will be noticing. General education elementary, so those are your elementary teachers, there'll be 5. Science 1, choir 0.4, so that's 2 sections of a choir. physical education 1, special education moderate severe 1, and then this is the one that technically we have to notice them, but it's a different form of a notice. It's a school psychologist, but we are not laying off school psychologists. What is anytime you shift the days that a certificated employee works, so example, if you shorten their school year, that impacts their pay, and so you have to tell them. We have had one school psychologist who's been working a much longer school year than other school psychologists, and we needed to write them, make them all the same amount of days, and so we're just taking them down to days. It has nothing to do with losing a school psychologist, but we do have to count them in our PKS. Now, some people, that's a total of 9.4. Some people will ask, well, does that mean we're laying off 9.4? Not necessarily, because we still have, remember, the big piece, the caveat to what I shared is you have to notice, the preliminary notice by March 15th. Final notification is May 15th. So we have until now in May 15th to, if somebody retires, if somebody moves, if there's funding that comes in that we can shift around, it allows for us then to not have to do what's called a final notification. So it's a positive. We are unbelievable. You guys, to know that in a district that's declined 1,500, the size we are, to only be having to notice, preliminarily notice, 9.4, and technically only 8.4 out of those have the possibility of getting a final, that's huge. That's absolutely, that tells you how diligent the sites are working, how diligent all of the departments, which is all of you, are working to ensure that we really keep things in a fiscal solvent manner. So that's a huge thing, especially right now in our surrounding districts. You're hearing about layoffs because the governor's budget came in different, all different things shift all of that. And so, and a lot of our surrounding districts are in declining enrollment too. And that impacts you, because with the kids come the money and come the need for the personnel. So that's one piece. So that's the particular kinds of notice. The third piece is tiebreaker. So go back to this, particular kinds of service. So I talked about those 8.4. Well, let's say, and I'm just going to kind of tell a scenario versus giving you all the legalism. Let's say you have two teachers who are both science teachers. I said there's going to be one, and let's say they both started on the same day. Well, you actually have to have tiebreaker language to be able to determine how do you go about which one is it. If they both started on the same day and layoffs are based on seniority, you have tiebreakers. So we have to actually have the board approve tiebreaker language. And so some of that, I'll give you the criteria to be used just so you can have a kind of an understanding. Is a teaching credential to teach in an identified district shortage area, teaching supplementary authorization or teaching subject matter authorization. C, a B-clad or a clad, and that's one I'll just kind of stop there to give you an example. So if we have those 5 elementary teachers that I talked to you about, well, let's say one of them that has the lowest seniority is in the dual language immersion program, and they are the Spanish portion of that dual language immersion. Well, you can't just put anybody into that class, because they have to be able to have a B-clad and teach the language. So that would be an example of the person who, even though they might be lowest, if they have a B-clad and they have the authorization to teach in Spanish, we have to continue to move forward. That person might have the ability to kind of bump over what we call that would break their tie, and they would skip. It'd be part of that skipping criteria. So there was other, a lot of legalisms that go along with that work in personnel, but we just wanted to kind of be able to give you where we're at with regards to those. And the board does have to take action, and they did take action with regards to accepting the tiebreaker language and the skipping criteria, which is annual. You haven't really changed it since 2008. Similar language, couple pieces you kind of shift as laws change, and then the other piece with regards to particular kinds of service. So before I step away, I kind of gave you a lot of information, and it's kind of the boring stuff, but to us it's really fun. Do you have any questions with regards to the 3 pieces that I shared with you? You guys are so quiet this morning. Oh my goodness. I wish when I was in the classroom teaching, my classes were this quiet. That never happened. Okay, yes, Sonia.
About the PGS position not being filled, and then Dr. Perez taking on those duties. Now, does that mean that it is also a raise in pay, or is it a lateral move?
That's a great question. So the question was, with the PGS not being replaced, is it a lateral move for Dr. Perez to go over, and who and how where's PGS going to go, and what does that look like? Completely lateral. It was a title change for Dr. Perez, no money involved. PGS is actually not going to be part of Dr. Perez. That is shifting. And Lynn Carmen Day will continue. She has been since Antonio's been gone, our chief academic officer. She will continue to have the direct oversight of PGS. Okay, that was a great question. Any other questions? No? Okay, then I'm going to tag it off to Dr. Lewis, who had the most exciting and passionate presentation last night.
Good morning. So, I'm not really sure how to tell a 2.5-hour story in 5 minutes, so I'm going to do my very best. You're familiar with the charter process. We've talked about it different times in different situations. But last night, Encore School for the Arts, one of our charter schools, was up for renewal. They submitted their petition in December, and then all of these timelines get put into place. And that led us to last night, which was the end of our 60-day timeline, where the board had to make a decision whether to renew or deny the charter petition on behalf of Encore. So to start, one thing was very evident to all of us last night. There were several hundred people. I don't even want to guess, but I would say 200 to maybe 300 people there, from students and parents and community. And I may be underestimating, or just a lot of people were there last night just to share their story of how they loved their school. And they talked for, I think by the time we're done, it was about an hour and a half of comments just about their passion for Encore. And that was a very loud and clear message on behalf of the students and parents. When they finished, Dina Harris, who's our legal counsel, and I presented to the board, once you get that petition for renewal, our team has to go through it. So we had about 25 of us, meaning staff members, go page by page of that petition, and we compared against criteria of whether or not they meet renewal criteria. And I'm skipping a lot of details, but you get the process. And then we have to present a fact finding. So we presented that to the board last night, and there were a lot of concerns with Encore. The concerns were a lack of academic growth. Concerns were fiscal mismanagement. Concerns were lack of fiscal reserves. And the list continued. It was misappropriation of funds. It was, it come to find out by the end of the night that they don't have a reserve and they're actually running negative on their financial balances. If there were a lot of things told that if we were not to renew, that they would be closing immediately because they didn't have the funds to finish the year. So a lot of concerns on behalf of staff got brought forward to the board. We presented that report in great detail. Dina did a phenomenal job, our legal counsel. And then the board had to deliberate. And the board is tasked with the most difficult decision of what to do. You have, and a few board members, I think, said it so eloquently, you had the passionate story from community and kids of how they love their school and how kids have found a safe haven and how they found a place that they enjoy going every day that is different from the schools they came from, compared to this report from staff saying this school fiscally is not running well. It's not been managed well, and we have great concerns. We're recommending not renewing. So you had these two different approaches that would then collide at the board. And you've heard Dr. Hansen talk about many times of the board is left with that difficult choice. So fast forwarding to the end of probably around a 2.5 hour discussion, their legal counsel came up and granted us and requested a 30-day extension. And what that means is in the process, we have 60 days from when they give it to us to when we have to give a finding. There is the ability to grant us that 30-day extension to stretch that out to 90 days. We requested that in December, and Encore denied that request, which is their purview. And they said they were not interested in that. Well, last night their legal counsel came back and said, we'd like to reconsider that. We'd like to give you a 30-day extension and have our teams come together and see if there is a way we can not close Encore. So kudos to them as a management team, and kudos to their legal counsel to getting outside of the box and changing their perspective. So the board did decide to accept that request for 30 days because it has to be mutually agreed upon. So now what will happen is their legal counsel and staff and our legal counsel and staff and maybe even a few board members will come together in roughly the next 30 days, but it will not exceed that, to come up with a new plan. Then we'll present that plan to the board. And ultimately, the board will be the decision, have the final decision whether or not to accept that plan or to deny that plan and deny the charter. So stay tuned. More will be coming, but that was a very long conversation tried to synthesize quickly. A lot of passion in a very, very difficult situation. So appreciate the board and their comments, and appreciate the speakers, and just unfortunate when you're in that situation where you have to make such a hard decision. So any questions about Encore? From friends or comments or community? Yes, ma'am. Patricia in the back. Nice and loud. I believe the percentage, what is the percentage of RUSD students at Encore? I believe the last number they gave us, they have about 700 students right now. I want to say the last number was right around 300, but during the presentation, different numbers were thrown out. So to the best of my knowledge, I would say we're about 35% of what their Encore population is, our students. They draw from, and you heard the stories from Hemet and people driving from Harupa and Moreno Valley and all over the Inland Empire are driving in, and they talk about the commute of leaving at 5 in the morning, and there are a lot outside of our boundaries, but to my best recollection is between 30 to 35% are RUSD students attending Encore. And I could be off a little bit. Good question. Any other questions or thoughts? Are we good? So I'll be back within 30 days and give you an update of what the final decision is. And I think I'm turning it over to Lynn.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning. It's been already a great morning. I had the opportunity last night to talk about our local control and accountability plan. And remember, that's our equity plan for the last 6 years. It targets the success of our foster youth, our English learners, and our socioeconomically needy students. And so last night we put a recommendation to the board about 2 things. One is changing our timeline. So this is pretty exciting for us. Every year we've gone through a huge process and then kind of rushed near the end to get things implemented, sometimes not implementing well into the next year, and sometimes disrupting some even staff. And so we asked the board to help us agree to make minimal changes next year in the 2020-2021 school year, and begin to have extensive conversations in the 21-22 school year, which is actually 2 years out. So that's kind of our new timeline. And they agreed to do that, and they could see the benefit to our system as far as making adjustments that may be disruptive to the system, as well as taking the time to develop a very clear, intentional plan for change. So I'm excited about that. There's 2 things that guide the actions and services in the LCAP, one of which is our data. So we showed our data again, and we talked about a couple of areas that are red. Otherwise, we've had a lot of great growth in our data thanks to the hard work of our entire team. Those areas were for suspensions, Pacific Islanders, and suspensions, foster youth. And then the other was students with disabilities in college career index. So those are a couple areas. We also are provided feedback from our stakeholders, which that includes our staff, our families, and especially many listening sessions for students. And once we do that, we go ahead and prioritize those, and we put together themes. What's interesting about the themes is the themes are similar every single year. Something kind of cool, though, is safety wasn't necessarily a major theme this year, what would that tell you? Just if it's not showing up as a major theme or concern for the community. That's positive. But still, top recommendation for our staff as we prioritize some of the ideas that came our way was to continue on to grow our safety and security for our school, to look at wellness for our students, and continue to add to an already robust and effective program because there is such a great need, and also for equity professional development, which was around inclusive practices for reaching all students, special ed, EL, all students, as well as that cultural proficiency training and equity work that Dr. Perez is leading. So those are the recommendations we made for next year's minor changes in the 2 areas of equity professional development and our wellness initiative for our students. And the board agreed. Anything that we were going to add to the plan, we would equally have to pull out in the budget. So we made a recommendation for that, in addition to a decrease in our LCAP budget of $450,000. That was because we have had decline in enrollment. I know we've presented that to you in the past, and that impacted the LCAP funding, or the LCFF we call it, by $450,000. So we put those 2 amounts together, and we are finding approximately $900,000 within our accountability budget to offset that, which we made a recommendation for 3 areas. A reduction in our shared leadership expense, which is kind of our structure that we've done a good job refining, and we can make a reduction and not lose any momentum. We also, one of the things was for preschool, not losing any services before anyone wants to grab me. But just because our state rose the cap for that, it allowed us to absorb about $75,000. So that was another positive. And what was the third one? Do you guys remember? Oh, and then instructional rounds. Sites can still do rounds where teachers walk other teachers' classrooms, but then it will be more site-based than district-based now. And that balanced out our budget. And then just to finish up, we asked the board to look at years 2 and 3 in those same 3 areas, which was wellness initiative, security and safety, and the equity professional development. They agreed we would have to find at least $2 million a year, so we'll be tasked to find that funding, and we will bring it back to them on 3 separate dates, which will be May, August, and October board meetings. And in October, we'll make a recommendation, final recommendation for what we would have to reduce in order to add. Because one thing you know about the budget now is whatever we add, as far as actions and services, we have to find the equal reduction. I can't believe how quick I did that. You just heard the whole presentation, but no colored slides. Color jacket. Any questions? Anything new that you learned? Share with your partner if you learned one new thing, or one question that validated something you knew about our accountability plan. Go. You got it. Oh, okay. All right, let's come back together. Wilson, Wilson is, just for the record, if you're not with us, he was just waving at me. Good morning. That was. Any comments or questions? That good. This is going to be a great day. Dr. Lewis? I'm out. I'm gone. I'm going to PTA now.
We're all going to PTA now.
Is it over? I was wrapping it up.
You were wrapping it up, but that's okay. Any questions on anything we talked about? We'll meet you at PTA. Are we good? Thank you for what you do. Have a fantastic day. And if there's anything that you don't want to ask whole group, feel free to let us know. Have a great day, and thanks for your time.